There are some words you hear so often you stop questioning them. I can do all things. You've probably seen it on a wall, a t-shirt, even told it to yourself when things got hard. It sounds strong, it sounds like confidence, like nothing can stop you when you believe enough. But here's the part we don't usually think about. The man who wrote that line wasn't standing at the edge of a breakthrough. He wasn't celebrating a win. He wasn't stepping into something new. He was sitting in a prison cell. Not the kind of place where you still feel in control. The kind where your future is uncertain, your freedom is gone, and the people you thought would stay don't always stay. That's where those words came from. So now the question shifts. Because I can do all things was written in a moment like that. So it doesn't mean what we've been told it means. It was never about becoming unstoppable. It points to something we've been missing, not because it's complicated, but because we've been looking in the wrong direction the whole time. So what did he actually mean? And why does this one sentence feel so right when we say it, but so different when we actually have to live it? Because we all reach moments when you say those words and nothing changes. Part 1. The verse everyone thinks they understand. Most people don't question this verse. They use it before an exam, before a big decision, before something they really want to go their way. I can do all things. It becomes a kind of push, a way to gather yourself, a way to believe you're about to break through something. And on the surface, it works. It gives you confidence. It gives you momentum. It feels like faith. But there's something underneath that doesn't quite line up, because the way this verse gets used today always points in one direction: forward, upward, toward something better, win, achieve, overcome. That's the tone. And the more you hear it like that, the more it starts to sound right. It fits the way we think. It fits the way we hope life will go. But then you look back at the one who wrote it. Paul the Apostle didn't write those words on the way up. He wrote them when everything had already been taken away. No platform, no momentum, no visible progress. Just chains, silence, waiting. And that creates a tension you can't ignore, because the same sentence, used today to talk about winning, came from a man who had already lost more than most people ever will. So something doesn't match. It's not a small detail. It changes the whole direction of what those words are actually doing. And once you see that, you can't just read it the same way anymore. Because this verse has been turned into something that helps people move forward, while it was written by someone who had to learn how to stay. And most people never hear it that way. They keep using the verse, but they've disconnected it from the place it came from. And when that happens, it starts to sound powerful, but it stops being true to what was actually written. Part 2. The context we keep ignoring. It's easy to read a sentence and fill in the blanks with your own life. That's what most people do with this verse. They bring their goals, their plans, their pressure, and the words start to sound like they were written for that moment. But those words came from a very specific place. Not a stage, not a moment of victory, not even a turning point. They came from confinement. Paul the Apostle is writing this letter while under Roman guard. Not free to move, not free to choose what comes next, not building something, not expanding anything. His world has narrowed down to waiting, uncertainty, and whatever news happens to reach him from the outside. There's no sense of control in that kind of place. Time moves differently. Days don't feel like progress, they just feel like repetition. You wake up in the same space, with the same limits, carrying the same unanswered questions. And that kind of place feels familiar in a different way. Not a prison with chains, but a season where nothing is moving. You're still showing up, still trying, still doing what you know is right. But nothing opens, nothing shifts, nothing really changes. And that's where this starts to land differently. Because in that kind of space, you don't need motivation. You need something else. And yet, in that exact setting, he writes words that people now use to talk about breaking through. That gap is hard to ignore. Because when you remove the setting, the sentence starts to drift. It becomes something you can shape into whatever you need it to mean. It starts to sound like ambition, like drive, like forward motion. But put it back where it was written, and it presses in a different direction. This isn't a man describing what he's about to accomplish. This is a man describing something he has already had to face. Lack, restriction, delay, not once but repeatedly. And over time, something has been formed in him. Not suddenly, not easily, something learned, something tested, something that didn't come from things going his way. That's the part people skip. They quote the strength, but they never stop to look at what shaped it. So when you hear "I can do all things," it isn't coming from momentum. It's coming from a place where momentum doesn't exist. Part 3. The line before changes everything. Right before that sentence, there's a line most people skip. Not because it's hidden, not because it's hard to understand. It just doesn't sound as powerful. Philippians 4:11-12. I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. That word matters. That word matters. He learned. Not something he was born with, not something he felt all the time, not something that showed up when life was easy. Learned. Which means there were real moments behind that word. Moments where he didn't have enough. Moments where he depended on others and they didn't come through. Moments where he did what was right and still ended up alone. Moments where nothing changed. Not quickly. Not the way he hoped. And over time, something shifted. Not the situation. Him. He says he knows both sides. Not from reading about it. From living it. Having enough and having nothing. Being supported and being forgotten. Seeing things work and watching them fall apart anyway. And neither side owns him anymore. That's where the sentence comes from. Not from a place of rising, but from a place of being steady. So when he says "I can do all things," he's not talking about doing more. He's talking about staying the same. No matter what changes around him, that's the difference. Because strength, the way most people think about it, shows up when things are working. But the strength he's talking about only shows up when they don't. When you've prayed and nothing shifts. When you've done your part and the outcome still slips through your hands. When you wake up to the same situation again and you don't fall apart. That's what he learned. And once you see that, the verse stops sounding like a promise of what you can achieve. It becomes a picture of who you can remain when everything else refuses to change. Part 4. What all things actually means. The phrase sounds simple. All things. That's where people start filling in their own meaning. All things becomes success. All things becomes breakthrough. All things becomes getting where you're trying to go. That's how it gets used. But that's not how it was written. Because the all things Paul the Apostle is talking about isn't a list of achievements. It's a range of realities. Need and plenty. Full and hungry. Having support and having none. Those are the all things. Not the moments you choose, but the ones you find yourself in. And most of them aren't the ones you would pick. Because this doesn't expand your control. It takes it away. You don't get to decide how things unfold. You don't get to shape every outcome. And that's where people struggle. Not when things are working, but when they stop. When you've done what you're supposed to do, and nothing follows. When you stay faithful, and still feel overlooked. When you try to move forward, and everything holds you in place. That's included. All things includes that. Not just the moments that make sense. Not just the ones that feel like progress. Everything. So when he says, "I can do all things," he's not claiming control over outcomes. He's describing a steadiness that isn't tied to them, a kind of strength that doesn't depend on things improving. Because if it did, it wouldn't hold in the places where he actually lived. And that's the difference most people miss. They hear all things and think it means they can reach anything. But in the way it was written, it means you don't fall apart inside anything. And once that lands, you don't hear the verse the same way again. Part 5. Why we keep misreading it. Let me speak to you for a moment. Not as someone explaining a verse, but as someone who has had to sit with it longer than I expected. Because the reason we keep reading this wrong is not that we don't understand the words. It's that we don't like where they lead. I've done this myself. I've said those words, "I can do all things," in moments where I was hoping something would change. hoping a door would open, hoping a situation would turn, hoping God would move things forward. And when it didn't, I didn't question the verse. I questioned everything else. What did I miss? What did I do wrong? Why is this not working? And I've watched others walk through the same place. People who were steady until life slowed down. People who trusted until the answer didn't come. People who believed until the silence stayed longer than they were ready for. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly. You start measuring things. You look at your effort. You look at your prayers. You look at how long it's been, and without saying it out loud, you begin to expect something back. Not from people, from God. You expect movement. You expect clarity. You expect something to shift. And when it doesn't, that's when this verse starts to feel different. Because it no longer sounds like a promise. It sounds like a question. Not what can I achieve, but what holds me together when nothing changes. That's where most people step back. Not because they don't believe, but because that kind of faith feels unfamiliar. It doesn't give you control. It doesn't guarantee outcomes. It asks you to remain in a place where you would rather move on. And that's the part we resist. We don't reject the verse. We reshape it. We turn it into something that tells us we'll get through by getting out. But that's not what was written. And somewhere inside, you know that. That quiet moment when you say the words, and nothing shifts, that's not failure. That's where the verse begins to tell the truth. Part 6. When this verse becomes real. There's a moment when this verse stops sounding good and starts getting honest. Not when things are working. Not when you feel strong. But when you wake up and it's the same situation again. You've already prayed about it. And you've already thought it through. You've already tried to move things forward. And nothing moves. You still go to work. Still carry what needs to be carried. Still show up for people. But inside, there's a quiet weight. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just there, and this is where most people stop using the verse. Because it doesn't feel like it fits anymore. I can do all things. You don't feel like you can do anything. You're just trying to get through the day without breaking down. And that's the moment most people don't talk about. And when you're not winning. Not progressing, not even sure what God is doing, just staying, still choosing not to give up, still choosing not to become bitter, still choosing to do what is right, when it would be easier to stop. No one sees that. No one claps for that. But that's where this becomes real, because strength doesn't always look like movement. Sometimes it looks like restraint. You could say something, but you don't. You could walk away, but you stay. You could harden, but you choose not to. That takes something deeper than motivation, and that's what those words are holding. Not the strength to change everything around you, but the strength to hold yourself together when everything around you stays the same. So when you say, I can do all things, it's not about pushing harder. It's about not collapsing in a place you didn't choose. And if you've ever been there, you already know that kind of strength doesn't feel loud. It feels quiet, but it holds. Part 7. A different kind of strength. At the end of all this, the words don't disappear. I can do all things. They're still there. But they don't sound the same anymore. They don't feel like something you say before you try harder. They feel like something you hold on to when you can't try any harder. Because now, you know where they come from. Not from a moment where everything worked, but from a life where a lot of things didn't. And still something held. So this isn't about what your life will become. It's about who you remain while it doesn't become what you expected. Because there are parts of your life right now that haven't moved. You've prayed about them. You've thought them through. You've tried to be patient. And they're still there. The same conversation that never really changes. The same pressure you carry into each day. The same question you don't have an answer for. Nothing dramatic. Just unfinished, and you're still in it, still showing up, still choosing not to give up on people, still choosing not to shut down, even when it would be easier. That's where this lives, not in the version of your life that makes sense, but in the one you wake up to. So when you say those words now, they don't mean I will overcome everything. They mean something quieter. You will not let this turn you into someone you don't want to become. Not overnight, not perfectly, but you will still stand. You will still be kind when it's easier to be cold. You will still be honest when it costs you something. You will still hold on when nothing seems to be holding you. And that kind of strength doesn't look impressive from the outside, but it's real. It's the kind that carries you through seasons that don't move, without letting them define you. And maybe that's what you needed all along. Not a way out, but a way to remain. Conclusion: I can do all things. Not everything will change. Not every door will open. Not every prayer will turn the way you hoped. But you will not become someone you don't recognize. You will not lose what matters most, just because life didn't go your way. That's what these words are holding. Not a promise that you'll get out, but a strength that keeps you from falling apart while you're still in it. And wherever you are right now, I hope you're held in that you're given just enough strength for today, that you don't lose heart in the waiting, and that somehow, quietly, Jesus Christ keeps you steady. Even when nothing else seems to move,